step up in the scene. Check your engine is clean. DPF guys got your ride smoking green. No block, no drag, just pure machine. Come show us your truck, we'll make it pristine. We just wanna know, can your diesel uphold? Bring something dirty, we'll turn it to gold. It's like this, we clean up your flow. Now your engine is gliding. It's time to hit the road.
All right. Oh, here we go. We are live. It's been way too long. We've been doing some stuff. Hold on a second. Yes, dear. Hold on a minute here. Yes. Good night. I'll talk to you later. Sleep well. Maria's just going to bed. So she is just back from the Philippines, my wife, Maria. So she's still a bit jet lagged. So she's came in to say goodnight. Anyway, so what have we done? We did filters for the 80th largest yacht in the world, which is only just about this much shorter than Mark Zuckerberg's yacht, believe it or not. So all sorts of interesting stuff we've got going on. And so we've been a bit lax with our lives. I hope to fix that. Exciting news. Anybody watching us on Rumble, this is our premiere Rumble Live. So wherever you're watching us, thanks for taking a peek at what's going on here. Definitely follow, subscribe, make sure you get a hold of us if you need to. And the whole purpose of these things is to just say hello, give you the ability to ask some questions in the chat, wherever that might be. We can pull it up on the screen here and see if we've got anything. Nothing yet, but I can watch the chat and see if anything comes in. But what Harper does, if you ever call or text us, guess who you'll be talking to? It's a 99.99% chance you'll be talking to this lovely lady, Harper. And so what she does is kind of gathers up questions that come in through the week or weeks prior, and we'll throw them at me here, and let's see if we can get them answered. So, Harper, what's question number one?
Question number one is about DEF additives, and how do you feel about them?
DEF is DEF, just like kind of like salt is salt. And DEF is 32.5% urea. And the balance, which 67.5%, I think my math is correct on that, is just deionized water, which is basically distilled water, no minerals in it, that sort of thing. And that is the ANSI standard for DEF. That's all it should have. And adding any additives to it, hopefully won't cause any damage, but it's not going to help anything. DEF will freeze at a certain temperature. I mean, some of these additives claim like, that raises the freezing point, or it does, stops it from crystallizing. And the whole thing is it might crystallize differently because, like, for instance, adding some of this additive to your DEF might basically turn it from regular DEF to platinum DEF. And all platinum DEF has is a couple drops of surfactant or soap, and it doesn't affect how it crystallizes within your system, but it may crystallize differently. If you spill some on the side of your truck, you'll notice that the flakes of the DEF that crystallize are maybe finer, but it doesn't actually change the performance of the DEF. So to me, I would say don't use a DEF additive because it's not going to do anything, and it's not going to help anything. And worst case scenario, if you use it wrong, use too much, or have the wrong additive, it could potentially cause some harm. If you are having issues with your system and you're hoping that a DEF additive will fix it, it probably won't. I'd say before you go to the store or go to Amazon, whatever it is, and spend 10, 15, 20 bucks on some additive that makes some promise, hoping that it's going to fix whatever issue, and you're not going to go to the dealership and get some $25,000 bill, which is not unusual. Just give us a call or a text, really, no matter where you are, at 404-999-1361, and just kind of tell us what's going on, and we can let you know what to do and save your money. Don't use a DEF additive. That's just my 2 cents.
All right, you heard it here. Def additives are trash.
Well, just, again, I don't want to speak, I don't want to talk smack about def additives because there might be somebody out there whose brother-in-law manufactures them or somebody who swears by them. If they work and don't cause any issues and they're happy with it, um, just keep on doing what you're doing. But I would say, if you're gonna ask me to use them or not use them, I'd say don't use them. And
Okay.
and if you have a problem that you think the def additive is going to fix, it's cheaper for you to call us than it is to buy the def additive.
Correct. I like that answer. All right, next up. Are you ready for the next question?
I think so.
All right. The 2015 Cascadia is known to have factory software that tells the engine to dump too much fuel when it's working hard. Does the software glitch essentially turn the engine into a blowtorch that destroys the exhaust system from the inside out?
It's strong words, but and again, this is going to be 2015, which will be kind of second half, 2015 model year, which is second half of 2014, first half of 2015. And, that's 2015 doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but it's 11 years now. So there are fewer and fewer of these trucks on the road. But when somebody calls and they say, I've got a Freightliner Cascadia with the Detroit engine, and I'm thinking about getting my DPF cleaned, one of the first questions we ask them is, what year is your truck? And the reason we ask that is because if they say it's a 2015 or a 14 or a 16, the first question I ask is, what symptoms are you having? And if they're having a symptom, which is the truck runs pretty well if it's a bobtail, if it's empty on a flat road, but the minute you've got some weight in the back and you're going up a grade and the truck's laboring a little bit, just working, and all of a sudden it throws something to do with DEF. And it's going to say DEF quality. It is going to say SCR efficiency, NOx conversion, something like that. And the story usually goes that you pull over, do a regen, and then you're pretty good. Because what happens, you're chugging up the hill, these codes come on, the truck starts to go into limp mode or derate, get to the top of the hill, do a regen, and now it's downhill from that point forward. You're perfectly fine. But then you go to the dealership, you drop off your load, head to the dealership. Now you don't bring, a loaded trailer to the dealership. You're usually going bobtail. And they go in, they usually sell you a $700 NOx sensor, some labor, you're, $1,200 later, you are, back in the road and the truck's running good. Well, guess what? You're bobtail, right? And, then you pick up an empty trailer and you're still running good, but you start putting, 20, 30, 40,000 pounds in the box and start heading up a hill. Same problem again. And this was really a confounding thing for me for a long time. And, we're replacing NOx sensors, replacing DEF headers, doing a lot of things like that. And then found out that back in the 2015 model year, the DD15 engines had it's been called to me a hot fuel map. And the fuel map has to do with, a lot of brainiac things that your engine control module does. But basically it maps how much fuel and how much air, and at what time all that stuff goes into your cylinder when the truck is working. And it changes based upon environmental factors, how hard the truck is working, all of these bazillion things. And for whatever reason, it was ever so slightly overfueling the truck. And what that was causing it to do is overheat the emission system, overheat the exhaust system. And the one box or the exhaust system on a Detroit really has kind of three main components, just like any emission system on a diesel. You have a DOC, the diesel oxidation catalyst, which is the first part that the exhaust flows through. You have the DPF, the diesel particulate filter. That's what catches the soot. And after that, it works its way down through the one box. DEF sprays in there and it goes through the SCR. The DOC is very tolerant of high temperatures. The precious metals in there, platinum and palladium, can go up to, several thousand degrees before they start to complain or more. The DPF might crack if it's good at getting overheated, but it can be fairly temperature tolerant. But then when too hot exhaust gets down to the SCR, the catalytic metals that are in the SCR if they get too hot, they start to vaporize and eventually will just kind of burn off. And and that starts to happen at about 1200 to 1250 degrees. And so if it just, got that temperature for a couple of minutes, it would start to damage it, but very slightly. But if it stays at that temperature for a long time, it'll eventually burn off the metals that are in the SCR, the selective catalytic reducer, which is the part that reduces the NOx, works with the DEF system and everything else. And um, and that's where basically the SCR is incapable of keeping up with the engine when it's really dumping out a lot of NOx. It varies truck by truck, but it's a very, very similar system. So if you've got a 2014, 15, or 16 Freightliner, that seems to run pretty well. But the minute you're tugging something up a hill, it begins to complain to you. That is the issue. Did Freightliner fix this? Yes, of course, they fixed it. But, it, what they did was by the time they figured out what the problem was, got the word out, people started coming in, by then the damage was done. And by then the warranty was expired. You do the math on that one. And so it's just, that's where it comes down to. And, the next question is, what can I do about it? Um, and really, there's nothing you can do, no additive, no magic thing you can do to the DEF. The one thing you can do is, I'm going to do a shameless plug here um, for Clean Air Fleet. And the one thing you can do is, run a decent fuel additive. And the one that I know that does work really well that we sell, and technically I'm a DPF guy. I shouldn't be recommending products that make you come and see me less, but Clean Air Fleet is definitely something that we've seen that has extended the interval between DPF cleaning substantially for trucks. And one of the things that a good additive, Clean Air Fleet being one of them, there might be others, can improve the efficiency of how well your fuel burns. And if your fuel burns more completely and in a better, more, in a more efficient manner, your truck can produce less NOx. And if you produce less NOx, it places less burden on the SCR, and it won't make the problem go away. It's very much a Band-Aid. It won't hurt the truck. It'll help other things in your fuel system, but it's one of those things where, really the only solution is a replacement one box, from us or the dealership or whatever it might be. And we also do full rebuilds of the SCR system in the one box. Side by side, the difference in price between getting a rebuild done and getting a brand new replacement one box with new filters and a 3-year warranty. It's definitely cheaper to rebuild it, but not in my mind. I don't think the price difference is that compelling. And again, you can call us and ask us questions about that. We'd be happy to talk to you. But basically, once the one box gets that bad, it's time to replace it. Now, back when we first started back in 2019, those 2015 Freightliners were still fairly new. But seriously, if you get a 2015 Freightliner, 2014 Freightliner, that thing's 11 or 12 years old. And, it's really the thing where you look at that and say, is it worth, making the investment to replace this part? Or maybe, should you look at getting a new truck? But if the rest of the truck is really good, maybe you just got an in-frame done, the engine is good, the transmission is good. And, while it's not cheap to replace a one box, I mean, I think when all is said and done, sensors and everything like that, you're probably at, for the parts, 11 grand, probably another, $800 for a mechanic to, take the old box on, put the new one box on, back on. So you're at 11, 12 grand. If the rest of the truck is good, put that on and you're going to be, you'll probably be retired before you have to worry about it again. So long story short, if you've got a 2014, 15, 16 Freightliner and it throws DEF quality, SCR efficiency, NOx conversion type codes when the truck is pulling up a hill, save your money. Don't bother throwing NOx sensors and things like that at it. Give us a call. The call is free, and we're more than happy to talk to you about it and help you make some decisions, because you might say, hey, maybe it's time for me to look at a new truck, or book a load to Atlanta and come see us. And if we get everything lined up ahead of time, you do want to do one box replacement, we can get you in and out the same day, and then Harper can help you with that. So there you go. That's answer number 2.
I like that one also.
And I think, these 2015 questions, it's just like every week that goes by, we see fewer and fewer. These trucks are retiring and being
Mhm.
replaced. And, I should actually talk about something when it comes to replacement. Hang on a second. We see a lot of owner operators that are buying trucks from large fleets. And, Kroger, Walmart, Schneider is we see a lot of Schneider. I think Schneider might be one of the largest truck dealerships in the country. They've got, many, many, many trucks. And of course, Schneider is very near and dear to me because they're a Green Bay based company. I was born and raised about 30 miles from Green Bay. Go Packers. But what they do is they generally sell their trucks used at about 400,000 miles. And what happens is somebody will buy that truck and they get the keys, and they put their DOT number on the side and off they go. And at about 600,000 miles, the truck will start giving them emissions problems, start giving them, calling for regens and things like this. And these people are like, oh my God, I got a lemon. What are we going to do? And, I always tell them, don't worry about it. You got a truck that was very well maintained from a reliable source. But when these big fleets sell their trucks, they wait until they're fully depreciated financially, which takes about 36 to 48 months, 3 years to 4 years. And they sell them before any of the more major, not repairs, but maintenance items need to be done, such as overhead valve adjustment. That needs to be done at 500,000 miles. The truck is sold at 400,000. The manufacturer recommended interval for a DPF cleaning on a Detroit, a truck powered by a Detroit, is with a one box is 400,000 miles. And guess what? You bought the truck at 400,000 miles. And so I always tell people, no sweat. You just bought a good truck with a dirty one box. And so you get that taken care of. You're good to go. And I did mention the overhead valve adjustment. That's something that you do not want to forget about. You want to make sure you get that thing done. Definitely on the Detroit, I think all the trucks, want to get done every 2 years or 500,000 miles. And there's probably somebody in the comments that will suggest doing it every 200,000 miles. But that overhead valve adjustment is definitely a ounce of prevention and many, many pounds of cure. We've seen a lot of problems caused by simply low compression due to overhead valve adjustment. And if you let your overhead valve adjustment go too long, the valves eventually start wearing out their seats. Now, again, I'm not a mechanic, so if I'm incorrect on this, I'm not going to be offended if somebody tells me what it really is. But basically, if you let your overhead go too long, it begins to damage the head, and then it becomes a bigger job. And it is a labor-only job. I think it's 5 or 6 hours of labor. Get that done, and you will have so many fewer problems that, again, ounce of prevention, 10 pounds of cure. That's your bonus answer to a question I wasn't even asked.
Good bonus answer. Yeah, I end
But
up
you get a lot.
recommending.
We get that. Yeah, that overhead thing. Well, James the mechanic will talk about, needing an overhead, and so we always
I talk
mention that to
about
people.
them a lot throughout the week because people will come through with questions, and that seems to be the cure. Because when I talk to James, our full service heavy duty mechanic, he's the one who always recommends. He's going to say, when's the last time they had an overhead done? And
Yep.
9 times out of 10, that's the fix. And of course, the DPF cleaning as well.
But the thing is, you don't want to have a sloppy overhead and then clean or replace your DPF because the valves being out of adjustment, being too sticky or loose or whatever happens to them, will cause your engine to either plug up the DPF really fast or even crack it. And we want to get you in and out as cost effectively as possible.
Yeah, and I talk about that often, that we wanna fix the issue, we don't wanna see anyone too soon.
Yeah, that's why I want to see you again, just not too soon. Of course, you can always come back in and see us just to say hi, but
Yeah,
we
maybe
want
get
to
some fresh bread.
Some fresh bread, exactly. I baked fresh bread this weekend, in fact. So what's question number 2.5?
All right. If someone is in the market for a used diesel right now and they're terrified of buying a money pit, what is one thing a buyer can check besides the dashboard lights to know if the previous owner actually took care of the emission system or if it's about to fail?
Boy, that's a really good question. And, again, anybody can lie to you and say, "Oh, this, we had this done and had one box replaced," or whatever it might be. And a lot of times the used truck dealer will just run a quick forced regen on the truck and then send it. So, um, I would say the number one thing you want to look at is check the stack or the tailpipe. See if there's soot on the stack or the tailpipe, um, because that would either indicate that you have a cracked DPF that's letting soot through, or someone's trying to sell you a deleted truck, and that can be a disaster. I won't even get into that. So check for soot on the tailpipe. And then also just look to see that all of the emissions parts aren't melted. I mean, you'd be amazed at how many times like a harness will show melting on it, and that can indicate that you've got an exhaust leak or something, something has gotten too hot. But looking, basically just physically look at the stack or the tailpipe, and is there soot on it? If there's soot on it, that means that there's potentially an emissions issue, and it's really not so much like, are you looking for an emissions issue? Yes, you are, because you have to take care of that. But that's symptomatic of something else. So, let's say you had a truck that did have a cracked exhaust pipe, and a good example of this would be a Freightliner M2 International 4300 with a Cummins 6.7 engine, the box trucks you see everywhere. And those are notorious for emissions issues starting at about 250,000 miles. And it's not because their emission system fails at 250,000 miles, it's because their engine they'll have their injectors will begin to stick. And the spray pattern of the fuel isn't this really nice fine mist, which causes the engine to run very dirty, produce a lot of soot. Also, that additional fuel produces a lot of heat downstream, cracking the DPF, or it produces so much soot that the truck is constantly in regen status. So look at that. If you see a truck, I think the number one thing to see if there's soot in the tailpipe, because that's going to tell you that there's either there's an emission system problem, and you don't have emissions systems problems of that type. Yes, you can have a sensor fail, or, it's a part, and those parts fail. But if you have a DPF that is plugging up, or a DPF that's cracking or melting, that tells you that there is a bigger issue in the engine. And so that's the number one thing. Look for soot on the tailpipe. Look for melted looming on on the harnesses. And if the tailpipe is clean and things aren't melted, you can be 90% sure the emissions part is perfectly fine.
Yes. Ready for the next question?
Yeah, I'm ready. Heck yeah.
All right. What are some of the benefits of using a fuel additive? I know we've touched on this on the previous questions, but come
I
back
tell
to
you,
it.
so benefits of a fuel additive. It's, technically if how can I describe this? So you got a couple things going on. One is the cetane level of the diesel fuel in the US is several points lower than what the manufacturers engineered the engines for. Now they'll run on just off the pump diesel fuel, and what's cetane and what's octane. So in gasoline you have octane, and basically the higher the octane number, it means the harder you can squish the gasoline before it goes boom, which allows you to have higher compression gasoline engines, spark ignited gasoline engines. On a diesel truck, there's no spark plug. It's all lit off by by compression. Cetane is the same but different. It's basically it's actually that you want the diesel to be more combustible, and octane is actually want the gasoline to be less combustible. So higher cetane diesel means that it combusts more readily, and you can get more more horsepower out of the same amount of fuel. Less less soot because it burns more completely, and basically the cetane level that your truck engine is looking for is the same thing that premium diesel would actually have, a higher cetane thing. So a fuel additive will boost your cetane of your fuel, and to the point that it's where your engine wants it. It'll burn more completely, more efficiently, and there's a trade-off for everything. So basically, again, the fuel additive we sell adds about 7 or 8 cents per gallon per treated gallon. So you buy a gallon of our fuel additive, Clean Air Fleet. Now, again, there's other ones, and people may love them, and that's fine. But just use this to kind of the same thing. So a gallon Clean Air Fleet's about 37, $40, something like that, and you're going to be that gallon will treat 320 gallons of diesel fuel, and so you do the math, that ends up costing you an extra 7 or 8 cents per gallon of diesel fuel. Will you get a little better fuel economy? Absolutely. And will you get more than 7 or 8 cents worth of fuel economy? Probably not. I mean, that's probably what you're going to see. So when we do a fuel additive, the nice thing about Clean Air Fleet, it isn't just an octane or just a cetane booster, because if it was just a cetane booster, what you're gaining in fuel economy, you're paying for in your additive. So you're not really gaining anything. But the way we look at it is the fuel additive that we sell, Clean Air Fleet, is so it ends up where the increased fuel economy offsets, basically balances out what you paid for the fuel additive. So that's good. Now basically the fuel additive is free. Now what do you get now that the fuel additive is paid for? Well, first of all, you're going to get a cleaner burn in your diesel fuel. So less NOx. If there's less NOx, you might use slightly less DEF, and that's a direct, it's definitely a savings. There'll be less soot, so you have to do fewer regens. You can go longer between regens, and I know this for a fact because what introduced me to Clean Air Fleet in the first place was a customer of ours that had a Freightliner Cascadia. It happened to have a Cummins X15 engine, and there was one of his friends or whatever had basically the exact same truck. I think they're the same color and everything. And one of them would go, Clint's truck went to almost 600,000 miles, and he did bring it into the DPF clean, but it never called for a parked regen that entire time. His buddy got to about 300,000 miles, and the truck started calling for parked regens. The only difference, they both had APUs, they both kind of drove the same route, kind of hauled the same thing, is one was running the Clean Air Fleet additive, one was not. And so one of them went almost twice as long between DPF cleanings, and that, and if you can avoid that, that's less money for me, less downtime for you. And that's not a bad thing. And of course, a good additive like Clean Air Fleet will again give you that cetane boost. We'll also add back in the lubrication properties that they took out when they reduced and then practically removed all of the sulfur. Now it's ultra low. First it was low sulfur diesel. Now it's ultra low sulfur diesel. That sulfur acted kind of like lubricant in your fuel system. And by using Clean Air Fleet, that does add the lubricity back in. That's kind of an added bonus. It does break down and prevent the carbon buildup, carbon deposit buildup, specifically a thing called asphaltene, which basically is like it sounds. Asphaltene is basically asphalt, and it's part of the fuel stack that's actually, or the hydrocarbon stack that is refined out when they make diesel and gasoline and everything else, because asphaltenes form when hydrocarbons are under heat and pressure. like they would be in the earth. And they're not in your diesel fuel by default because they've been refined out. But guess what your diesel fuel is under? It's under heat and pressure. So over time, it does form these little microscopic asphaltenes that will build up. And then Clean Air Fleet is one of the additives that will break those down. They get caught by your fuel filter, and away they go. Also, you're going to get it is water demulsifying, I think is the fancy term for it. And basically, what it does is any water that's in your fuel, it forces it out. The water go to the bottom of your tank, and you can drain it off. Because obviously, water doesn't burn, water doesn't compress, water can damage the tips of your injectors, and also if you have diesel bugs, you have something that you have um, LJ or bacteria, whatever that's living in your diesel tank. That stuff, that cloudy stuff that floats around. You can treat that with an algicide, or when you use Clean Air Fleet and it drops the water out, if there's no water in your diesel, no biologics can grow. And in fact, if you look in your tank and see that it's fouled with any sort of living entities, kind of, again, bacteria, algae, whatever it might be, that can only form if you have water. It would indicate that you have water in your diesel. And an additive like Clean Air Fleet will push that water out, and over time will basically, will starve these, these diesel creatures that want to live and eat your diesel fuel and plug things up, and they can't exist if there's no water in the diesel. So big proponent of Clean Air Fleet. I probably should not, because every time somebody uses it, we have to see them far less. But people have very, very good luck with it, and I really recommend that you give it a try. You can go to cleanairfleet.com and order it. You can call us, talk to Harper at 404-999-1361. And as you can see on the bottom, anybody who wants to try Clean Air Fleet, please text additive to 404-999-1361 to get 10% off on your first order, a case of 4 gallons or more. So there you go.
That's right. I love
Sweet.
the fuel additive. I notice a huge difference in my truck using it. So
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because you got that pickup truck. And big trucks, little trucks, pre-emissions, post-emissions, deleted, whatever it is. I mean, any diesel truck will absolutely love Clean Air Fleet. And, as people say, well, do I have to use it every time? And I'm like, yeah, you have to use it every time. But if you run out or want to stop using it, you can just see how the truck runs. And
Mhm.
I've had people do that because, they're in California. They, it's this place, the Clean Air Fleet is not sold everywhere. We're working on that. We're trying to get it into more places like Rush Truck Center and places like that. But and they'll say, well, what will happen if I stop using? I'm like, nothing. It'll, and just see how your truck runs. And they'll, less than 2 weeks later, they call up and go, send me some. I can tell my
Yeah.
truck runs much better with it. So even if you just want to use it kind of just as a, just a housekeeping thing, you certainly may. But really, to get the best performance across the board, you just use it every time you fuel your truck.
Yeah, I couldn't recommend it enough.
Cool. Well, and it's got anti-gel as well. So, so you never have to worry about, especially, long haul truck drivers, they'll fill up, they'll fill both their tanks in, Arizona or, Kentucky, or then they drive up to Michigan or Minnesota or Wisconsin, and then their fuel
Yeah.
system gels. So if you use the Clean Air Fleet, you have anti-gel all the time. You don't have to worry about it.
Multi-purpose.
You got it. Don't brush your teeth with it, though.
Oh, yep. Just for the truck. All right, next question. How does a dirty filter create back pressure that can actually blow out a turbocharger or destroy an EGR, turning a simple
Okay.
cleaning job into an expensive repair?
Yeah, so if you wait too long between DPF cleanings, usually what happens is before any damage will occur, the truck will just go into limp mode. However, if for some reason you don't go into limp mode and you have the the soot builds up and begins to build up in your downpipe, starts to work its way back into the turbo, and starts to cake up in the exhaust pipe that leads to the turbo. Um, remember, your turbo's spinning at 60, 70, 125,000 revolutions per minute. And if a chunk of that carbon comes off the wall of your exhaust and gets sucked in your turbo, it'll hit that thing and it's like being shot with a bullet, and it can literally shatter the veins of your turbo and cause all sorts of ruckus there. And of course, just that added back pressure makes it, your engine less efficient, more, worse fuel economy and everything else. And while the exhaust is always flowing through EGR cooler, if it starts to if it can't flow through efficiently enough and quickly enough where it can basically just in the EGR cooler, out the EGR cooler, it starts to build up in there. And eventually we can clean your EGR cooler, but there are times, especially on the Cummins 6.7, that does run a bit dirtier, especially when you get to 250,000 miles, where it'll clump up inside your EGR cooler like a big chunk of coal, and nothing we can do can get that out. So, I'm not saying you get your DPF cleaned every 15 minutes, but I always tell people, I said, think about it at about 200,000 miles, which means, when your truck hits that 200,000 mile mark, doesn't mean you have to just drop everything and head to Atlanta to have us help you, but just be like, okay, I need to get this thing done in the next 50,000, 100,000 miles. Um, and basically the number one thing is, if your truck calls for a parked regen, it's simply telling you that it's time to get your DPF cleaned. And again, like I said a number of times, calling us doesn't cost anything. And it doesn't matter if you're in Oklahoma or someplace far away. Yeah, we'd love to have you close and have you come in and see us and see what we can do to help you out. But a 5-minute phone call can kind of help clarify things and either make you feel better or worse, I guess, and at least know what you're facing. So if it's time to clean your DPF, just clean it. Just like, there's comes a point where the garbage in your kitchen garbage can just starts to overflow. And, if you don't take it out, eventually your whole kitchen becomes the garbage can. So, when it's time, just get it done and just make sure you talk to us or somebody like us who are going to take care of you and make sure we point you in the right direction.
Mhm. Absolutely. Actually, I feel like getting your DPF clean, it's relatively cheap insurance. You get it done, you're good for another 250,000 miles to
Or more, you
maintain your
probably,
truck.
yeah, and it's just, and I probably, at the life of a typical truck, you probably need your DPF cleaned twice, maybe 3 times, assuming your engine's not doing something weird, right? Um, but, if your engine's running well, um, come see us at 300,000 miles. Come see us again at 700,000 miles. Come see us again at 1,000,000 and change.
Mhm.
And then by then you're probably getting an in-frame done and, or trading your truck in. But, um, uh, the process we use in a properly cleaned and completely clean DPF, and using a process that doesn't thin the walls of the DPF media, doesn't use chemicals or anything like that, is literally going to get the DPF to like new or as close to like new condition as possible. And the goal is to have the diesel particulate filter last the life of the truck, if at all possible.
Mhm. Yes, we do a great job at that.
Not that you
Um,
wouldn't be, not that you're biased or anything.
and it's easy to be because I'm constantly getting great reviews, so
Awesome. I love the sound of that. And we love our good reviews.
yeah. Actually, I had a guy call today. He's nowhere near us, but he's gonna set up a load just to come see us because he said he will only work with us.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that. All right. Next question. Do upstream filters affect the downstream filters in any way?
Yeah, this is actually really, really interesting. The Specifically on your newer model years of medium duty trucks, F-250s, Ram 2500s, 3500s, F-350s, etc. Duramaxes. It seems that those engines are tuned to such tight tolerances that they're very finicky about air intake. And I've noticed that we've had people that come in with with $90,000, $100,000 diesel pickup trucks that might only have 40, 50,000 miles on them, and their DPF is plugging up on them.
Mhm.
And the first thing I asked them is what? I said, "Are you using an aftermarket or an OEM air filter?" And they're like, "Well, aftermarket. It's a Fram or it's a K&N." And I'm like, "That's your problem. Take that out. Go spend $35 on an OEM air filter, get a forced regen, or if things are so bad you can't do a forced regen, clean your DPF. And you will never have a problem again." And it's counterintuitive because you would think, like back in the day, the more air you can get into the engine, the better it is. That's why people have the K&N, air filters.
Mhm.
You're standing at the counter at the auto parts store, and they've got the thing where you can flip the switch, and the ping pong ball goes higher based upon what air filter the thing. You're like, well, I want the ping pong ball to go as high as possible, so I'm going to get the K&N filter. But on these high performance diesel engines, too much air throws off the fuel air mixture. The engine can't keep up with it. It produces excess soot. Um, and you plug up your DPF. Now that's on medium duty stuff, pickup trucks and things like that.
Mhm.
On the and But on those trucks and the big trucks, um, if you have dirty fuel filter, dirty air filter, um, crankcase filter, all of these filters when they get really gummed up, will throw off that fuel air mixture, which means that your engine is not burning as well as it should. And just like when you start a campfire and if the wood's not really burning, what is it? Real smoky, it'll burn your eyes. That's because it's burning incompletely. And all in that basically that smoke that's coming off the fire that's really making you cough and getting your eyes and stuff is or the fireplace where you start a fire in the fireplace and it's kind of sooty up
Mhm.
on the hearth, but then when it really gets going, all that soot goes away. That's unburned fuel, basically unburned fuel. And the same thing happens when your air filter, if you're not getting enough air um, in the right, the right amount, at the right speed, um, your fuel doesn't burn completely, and that produces soot. Um, if your fuel filter is dirty, it's not able to deliver enough fuel. It doesn't burn completely, and now you have soot. So, um, you know, almost all emissions issues, other than failed sensor, def pump pooped out, def doser got stuck, a rat chewed through my def line, whatever it is. Those issues aren't related to the engine, obviously, but everything else, heavy soot load, face plug DOCs, cracked DPFs, melted this and burnt up that, 9.9 sometimes out of 10, it's something upstream. And then the something upstream can be caused by just a dirty air filter. So, keeping up with your basic maintenance, like even your DEF filter, if your DEF filter is all plugged up and it can't deliver DEF in the right spray pattern or the right volume, you'll begin to get SCR codes. So we always tell people replace your DEF filter, which is this little thing. It costs $16 or whatever, just every year when you get your DOT inspection done. DOT starts with D, DEF starts with D. Buy your DEF filter and have the guy that does your DOT inspection swap out your DEF filter. It's kind of like changing your battery in your smoke detector. Just remember to do it when the daylight savings time changes. And then just keep your air filter clean. We've had some nasty DPF issues, and we say, "Hey, when's the last time you changed your air filter?" "I don't know. Mechanic did it, I think." And you take it out, and it's there's squirrels and everything coming out of that thing, and it's like, there's your problem. So, basic maintenance, keeping your filters cleaned, make sure you have good, maintain keep up with your oil changes, and you're like, well, how can an air filter make my DPF dirty? Well, if you think about it, if you're not getting the proper amount of air, your fuel isn't burning completely. If your fuel doesn't burn completely, you get soot. The soot ends up being trapped in the DPF. Bada boom, bada bing, you're calling us.
It's perfect, and that's a cheap fix.
Cheap fixed.
Cheap fix, yeah. That's the end of my questions.
Really? It's the end of the questions,
Yeah.
and no one even left us any Like nobody's watching,
There's
no
2
one
people
asked any
watching.
question. There's 2 people watching? Sweet. We'll tell you what, to
Yeah.
those 2 people, you're my favorite 2 people in the world right now. Um, but anyway, so that's I mean, that's it, you know, I hope that you know, that anybody who sees this live or in the future, please, you know, put your questions over here, up here, down there, wherever the comments are. Leave us a question there. Or if you have any questions, call or text DPF guys at 404 999 1361 and make sure you say
Mhm.
hello to Harper. Um, we are turning the corner with winter. I think we're coming up to summer. So we look forward to seeing you as the weather improves. Um, and again, if you have any questions, it doesn't cost anything to call. And, you know, I'd be more than happy to talk to you if Harper can peel me away from whatever I'm working on. But I sure enjoyed spending this time with anybody who has been watching now or in the future. And please don't be shy and reach out to us. Harper, do you have anything else? Otherwise, we can kind of like wrap this baby up unless maybe we can be back here sooner than we, you know, we won't make people wait 2 months to see us.
No. No, I'm hoping that, people will see this and text in their questions, any questions they may have, because I'll be happy to compile them, and James will be happy to answer them.
Awesome. Well, tell you what, Harper, thanks for taking some time out to join the video. Anybody who's watching, thanks so much. I hope to see you, but not too soon. And we'll see you again. Thanks a lot.
Talk to you later.
Haze, just clear skies ahead with DPF guys. Your exhaust game's on tread. We got the tools, the skills, the might to get your truck rolling clean into the night. Throttle up, feel that clean airflow. Our service so slick, your ride seals the show. DPF guys, we got the fit so fine. Hit the road with confidence. Now the world's your shrine. Bring in that rig, let's get on track. Breathe easy with no sooty black.